All right, many of us are living through Bidenomics, which is not a helpful term, and it's also not helping any of our wallets. Today, to go over some big financial topics, I have with me Peter Schiff. Peter, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
So, just so I can give some background, Peter hosts a financial podcast. He owns a gold company. He also owns an investment firm and is one of the most sought after financial and economic analysts in America. I want to jump right into a question that I think my viewers want to understand. Why can't the Biden administration get inflation under control? Wages aren't keeping up. My viewers are definitely feeling the pinch of inflation in their wallet. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, remember, inflation is the way the Biden administration pays for all of its spending. So, by definition, it can't get inflation under control unless it wants to cut spending, which they don't want to do. They want to keep spending more and more money on all kinds of programs. The government is running a huge deficit, and inflation is the way to pay for it. The way we're paying for government is through higher prices. So when people go to the store and they see that the price of things that they want is higher, that's a tax. Those higher prices are making it possible for the government to run these massive deficits. So as long as we're spending money we don't collect in taxes, the Fed's going to be monetizing the difference. And we're going to have inflation. And in fact, we're still dealing with the inflation that was created even before Biden took office. I mean, he is adding to the pipeline, but there's a lot of inflation that's pent up that has yet to hit us, but it's coming.
Yeah. So you're thinking that it's going to get worse, not better.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no chance that inflation is gonna come down. I mean, it's going a lot higher because they're not doing anything about reducing government spending, and individuals keep spending. I mean, credit card debt is at a record high, household debt is at a record high. Everybody is borrowing and spending money. I mean, so prices can only go up. What we're not doing is producing. We have fewer and fewer people in the productive economy. A lot of people have left the labor force, and the ones that are still there are working in government, they're working in healthcare, they're working in services. They're not, really working to produce a lot of the goods that we all buy. And so we have fewer goods and more money chasing them. So prices keep going up.
Is this because fundamentally the United States year over year is shifting further and further away from being manufacturer and creator and just more and more about consuming?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a function of fiscal and monetary policy that is driving that. But that process is going to come to an end with de-dollarization when our trading partners no longer want to participate in the farce, and they stop accepting the money we print for the goods that they buy. And so when that happens, it's a major collapse here, and we see a huge decline in our standard of living.
What would be, I guess, the thing for us to be looking out for? Is it people buying less treasury bills? Is it them cashing in the treasury bills? Is it them saying we're no longer going to trade in the US petrodollar? What is the indicator?
Well, I think it's already happening, slowly. It's pretty obvious that there's an effort to de-dollarize. It's proceeding, at a, moderate pace. But I think that when you'll know that we're about to really feel it is you'll probably see it in the foreign exchange market, where you'll start to see a big drop in the dollar. You'll see it in the precious metals market. You'll see a big rise in gold. Maybe in the bond market, you start to see a really big drop in long-term bond prices. So none of these things have really happened yet. I mean, bond prices have come down, but they haven't completely collapsed. The dollar's been relatively stable, and the price of gold, too, has been hanging around $2,000 an ounce. I mean, yeah, it's near record highs, but it hasn't really, broken out to much higher prices. So those things are going to happen, and when they do happen, then you pretty much know that it's over.
Do you think that there is manipulation happening in the silver and the gold market, or is it just that people are hanging on to hope that the US dollar might make a turnaround at some point in the future?
I don't know, how much of it is manipulation or just ignorance, a real lack of understanding of the predicament that we're in, and a lot of false confidence in the Fed and other central banks. So I think people are making a mistake. I don't know if it's a coordinated effort to manipulate, but certainly the gold price is much too low, the dollar is much too high, a lot of stock prices are much too high because speculators are just making some very bad bets, I think.
Okay. You've been pretty adamant over on your podcast that the jobs reports that the Biden administration, the White House brag about are total BS. What do you mean by that? What are you seeing that we're not?
Well, I mean, they don't really jive with reality. I mean, the seasonal adjustments in many cases are enormous. And sometimes all of the jobs that are created are the result of seasonal adjustments, meaning that there were no actual jobs created, but they pretended they were. A lot of jobs are from the birth-death model, which are just, a guess. The official numbers really are at odds with these other surveys. The U.S. government, they have these household surveys, which, usually are, the opposite of the establishment surveys. Look at the tax revenues that are down, would suggest that fewer people are employed because the government is collecting lower taxes. Look at how low Biden's popularity is. That wouldn't be the case, I think, if the jobs market was actually as good as the government claims. I think a lot of unemployed people who are not being counted, are not happy with Biden. And I also don't think that the quality of the jobs really is reflected in the quantity. I think one of the main reasons that so many jobs are being created is that so many people need second and third jobs in order to make ends meet. So these are jobs that people would rather not have. They would like to be able to live on one job, but they can't do it anymore because the cost of living has gone up so much. So you have a lot of people moonlighting and working 2 or 3 jobs. And so that's skewing the numbers. And beneath the surface of these numbers, a lot of full-time jobs are being lost. In fact, I think over the course of the Biden administration, all of the new jobs have been part-time. I think on balance, we've actually lost. There are fewer full-time jobs now than when he took office. I think that's about where we are, or maybe just the last year or two. I'm not exactly sure, but that's been the trend.
Okay, so it's just people picking up a second or third part-time job. It's not a full-time job, working, putting all your efforts and talents into one company, getting some kind of 401k, vacation time. They're splitting their time up over different companies.
And more significant, it's not like there's somebody that was, out of the labor market who now has a full-time job, right? It's not like, so this guy went from not working to working. It's somebody who is already working, getting another job and working even harder. So meanwhile, you still have millions and millions of people who aren't working at all, right? They haven't been lifted off the unemployment rolls. They're still there, whether they're officially counted or not. They're not working. But now the people who are working even more. And they'd rather not do that. They'd rather have more leisure.
Yeah. I've seen people joke in my comment section, what do I got to do to get some help? Do I have to sneak across the southern border? Do I need to move to New York so that Mayor Eric Adams will give me $10,000? How big of a slap in the face is it to taxpayers to see so many people pouring into the country that aren't contributing to the tax situation, and yet their taxes are going towards foreign wars and illegal immigrants?
Well, I don't know. That's another statistic I read. I think that all the new jobs and net new jobs have gone to foreign-born workers. So the question is, are these workers who are here illegally, or are they the ones that come here legally through these visa programs? But it doesn't make any sense to me that if all the new jobs are for people who weren't born in America, chances are a lot of those jobs have gone to illegals. And to the extent that illegals are taking these jobs, these are pretty low-paying jobs that they're taking, and they're probably jobs that Americans don't want.
Okay, interesting. Donald Trump and RFK Jr. have both publicly committed to blocking a CBDC, a central bank digital currency. Do you think this is a good thing, a bad thing? And if bad, won't the elites just wait until the next president to try to force a CBDC on us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bad thing if we get one. So it would be a good thing for Trump to block it. But yeah, I mean, if you like freedom and liberty, you wouldn't want to empower the government with that type of a weapon. I have no problem with digital currencies issued by the private sector, especially if they're backed by something real, whether they're stable to the dollar or the euro, or they're stable to something like gold. That's fine. But I don't like the government doing it, especially if the government could mandate that you use their digital currency and get rid of cash. And now the government can spy on every single transaction you make and every single party that you transact with. And that's a lot of power and a lot, to give to a government, because, power is very dangerous that's in the hands of government. And you have to be vigilant. I mean, we've already given our government way too much power. In fact, they've usurped a lot of power that wasn't given to them by the Constitution. But this would just make it much, much worse, to the extent they had that much control over our lives, and that kind of ability to know, every little detail of every citizen.
Yeah, I saw a meme online that the government can do wasteful spending and not have their money audited or pass an audit. And yet, if you get $600 on Venmo, they want to know about it, right? They want to be able to tax every last penny out of you. Yet, we have a president whose son has cheated on his taxes. I read just yesterday that Ashley Biden finally paid back taxes that she owed. So they're not really setting a great example. But will the government ever be held to account when it comes to auditing and being fair with our tax money?
Well, first of all, it's not just about cheating on taxes. Obviously, that's a part of the impetus. It'll make it much harder for people to cheat on their taxes if all their transactions are, in these digital currencies. Because obviously, if you get some cash income, the government doesn't know that you got it unless you tell them. But if you get paid in a digital currency that they've issued, then they know, right? But it's on a bigger level than that. It's like, you don't want the government to know everything that you bought, because they can develop a profile on you based on your shopping habits. And now they know a lot of information about you. And to the extent that they want to use that information in some way that might be harmful to you, that is the threat. And if you think about it, our government is already not, that benevolent in government. But let's say things happen and the government becomes very oppressive to individual liberty. And the government starts, it's so corrupt, it's so oppressive, that the citizens want to have some kind of organized rebellion against this tyrannical government, right? We want to organize and try to, restore liberty and the law, right? We get some, tyrannical despot, right, that's running the country, and it's all corrupt. And the people try to fight back with some kind of resistance. It's almost impossible to do that if the government can spy on everything that you're doing. Right? You can't really organize. You can't, because you can't transact. The government knows everything about you. And the minute they see a certain transaction, they can send the troops to your house to throw you in jail or execute you, whatever, right? So you just don't want it. Even if the government is good now, it may not stay good, right? And so, you've got to keep government in check. You can't just give it all kinds of power and hope that it uses it for good purposes, and that it doesn't, use it to do evil. because that's a foolish assumption, because governments throughout history have done some very, very evil things to their people.
Yeah. I think a good example of that would be I read on Yahoo Finance that uh, Janet Yellen over at the Treasury authorized combing through people's banking data to see whether they were buying Bibles or something related to the word Trump or MAGA or whatever they might be able to, like you say, profile them based on their purchases. Um, we may not have a benevolent government in the future, and so now, like you say, imagine being able to track down to the penny everything that you spend, that you bring in. They can start building this online idea of who they think you are, whether that's correct or
Yeah, well
not.
then they could also make certain products illegal to buy, and then how are you going to buy them? I mean, if because if they see that you bought one of these products that's on their list, they can see that you've committed a crime. Or what could easily happen is, we end up having price controls because inflation runs out of control, and there are black markets. How you gonna buy something if you don't have cash? Because the only way the black market works is with cash, because you can't pay for it illegally, because that's what happens. So the government puts, let's say, price controls on, let's say, milk, and they say, well, you can't sell milk for more than $5 a gallon. Well, let's say if the real price of milk is $10 a gallon, right? That's what you need. Well, so now there's no milk. The shelves are empty. There's no milk in the supermarkets because the markets can't sell it for $5. But now if you want to buy milk, you could do it illegally on the black market and pay $10. But now if you try to buy the milk and you pay with a digital currency, and the government says, hey, he just bought milk for $10, that's going to put him in jail. So it's like, it makes it so much harder to circumvent bad laws, illegal laws, if the government immediately knows that you broke them, right? And it's not like I'm saying, hey, I'm in favor of criminals. No, it's something, you have a criminal government, and the people have to fight back, but they can't fight back, if you give your government so much power to oppress everybody.
Yeah. Where do you think the markets are heading? We're in an election year, which usually makes it a little bit harder to predict, although there is data. We're also coming off of a record-breaking S&P 500 type year. But where do you see the markets going as you research?
Well, I mean, the markets have been going up, led higher by a very narrow group of stocks. The average stock is not making much progress. But the market is overpriced. It's still being propped up by the Fed. I mean, despite what the Fed says, they claim that their monetary policy is restrictive. It's actually easy. Rates are still too low. The Fed's balance sheet is still much too large. If you look at debt levels and spending levels, they would reflect easy money. The same thing with the stock market. The Fed is very accommodative. Is it as accommodative as it was? No. I mean, it was more accommodative a couple of years ago when rates were zero and it was still doing QE. But rates are still too low. And even though they've shrunk the balance sheet, they haven't shrunk it enough. They're still providing too much credit into the economy. And you can see that in all the debt and all the spending. Meanwhile, the fiscal policy is highly expansionary and inflationary. It's, massive Keynesian stimulus is going into the economy. And even Keynes would say that's the wrong thing to do when you have an inflation problem. Keynes would say if you have too much inflation, you should raise taxes or cut government spending. That's what he would recommend. But we haven't done any of that. Not that I'm a Keynesian, but we're not even following Keynes.
Yeah, yeah. Would a good example be that my audience would understand easily? People saying, "Oh, look at the stock market; it's up," but then really they're referring to somebody like Nvidia that's up 500%. Just today on Yahoo Finance, it was announced that they've added billions more in valuation because they had another productive quarter. Is that an example of maybe misleading us by a narrow few that are doing extremely well?
Yeah, I mean, you have all the stocks that are perceived to benefit from the adoption of AI and the build out of AI. Uh, and so, yeah, I mean, it's a very narrow rally. Fewer and fewer stocks are going up, and they're propelling the averages because as these stocks get higher and higher, their cap weighting goes up and up on the market. And so the higher the price, the bigger the impact they have on the overall market as they keep going up. So it distorts what's really going on in the stock market.
Okay. Let's leave the stock market for a second. You may be a little biased, but obviously educated on gold, owning your own gold company. Where do you see gold going in the next year? Maybe where do you see gold going in the next 5 years? Again, with this idea of de-dollarizing.
Well, gold should go way up. I mean, de-dollarizing only works, because you got to buy something with the dollars. If you're getting out of the dollar, you got to get into something. And the something that they would get into would be gold. So to the extent that this trend continues, it should benefit gold dramatically. And gold is much too cheap. It's just north of 2,000 an ounce. It should be a lot higher than that, and it will be a lot higher than that. It's just hard to say with any degree of certainty whether it'll happen this year or certainly over the next 5 years. It seems to me that that's a time frame that I would be very shocked if 5 years from now gold isn't many multiples of its current price. Because I think something's going to go wrong within the next year that should propel gold a lot higher. But obviously, gold should already have moved much higher, and so the fact that it's still here, that doesn't rule out the fact that it can stay here for a while. But all of the fundamentals that are going to push gold much higher, they're all there. And in fact, every day those fundamentals get stronger and stronger for gold.
Yeah. Well, the central banks around the world seem to see the value in it. They're buying at a record pace right now.
And they still don't have a lot. If you look at historically, gold reserves as a percentage of total reserves, these central banks still need to buy a lot of gold.
Really? Okay, that's interesting. Do you think that some of the bigger players like China, Russia, some of these BRICS nations, are they going to try to back the BRICS basket with gold, or is it going to be a mix of different energies and metals?
Oh no, I mean whatever they do, it's going to be an improvement on what they got now, which is the dollar. But obviously, the best thing to do is just base your monetary system on gold. That's what's worked best in the past, and it would work again in the future. They are preparing for gold to be a more important monetary instrument. That's why they keep buying. I think they're also looking to back their currencies to a higher degree by gold rather than by other fiat currencies, in particular the dollar. So that trend is in motion, and that trend should accelerate.
Why is the United States central bank not buying gold? Is it because they have to bet on the petrodollar and buying gold would admit that it's weakening, or are they sitting back on their laurels going, hey, we've got about 9,000 tons of gold? Why is the US one of the only countries not buying?
Well, I mean, first of all, the Federal Reserve, all it owns is treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. So it isn't going to buy gold. I mean, that'd be the last thing that it would do. And plus, pushing up the price of gold is the last thing the Fed wants to see. So the Fed's not going to buy it. Now, the Treasury, how are they going to buy gold? We're running $2 trillion deficits right now, actually closer to $4 trillion. So is the Treasury going to go into debt more to buy gold? I mean, that seems like the last thing they're going to do. So I know the U.S. isn't going to be buying any gold. I mean, we might end up selling gold. Whoever knows how much we've got left, but we're broke. And so we may end up having to sell gold, and foreign central banks would be happy to buy it from us. But yeah, I don't see the U.S. government buying gold. It should have a lot more gold. I mean, 70% of our total reserves are in gold, which is about the highest in the world. But our total reserves are tiny compared to the size of our currency market and our bond market. So but no, I think the BRIC countries are going to be buying as much gold as they could get, and if we were to sell, they would buy it all.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay. Final question, Peter, and I appreciate you coming on. I'm not asking you to weigh in on the moral side of the Russia-Ukraine war, but the United States has given about $113 billion. They want to give another 61 billion. Does this add to the inflation problem in the United States, or with those
Of
dollars
course.
going overseas? Okay.
Well, of course, because where's the money coming from? We have to borrow it and then print it. I mean, it's just all we're expanding our money supply. And of course, perpetuating a war is generally puts upward pressure on prices because things are diverted to a wartime use, which are not available for peacetime consumption. So to the extent that we waste resources because we give this money to the Ukraine and then they use it to buy weapons from our military-industrial complex, right? But those are resources that are now being geared towards production of bombs and bullets as opposed to consumer goods. So fewer consumer goods, so means higher prices. But yeah, I've been opposed to this war since it started, like 2 years ago, or whatever. I think that the United States is the main reason that we have this war. I think that if we had stayed out of it, the Ukraine and Russia would have resolved this peacefully a long time ago. Would the Ukraine have given up some territory? Sure. But it would have been much better than what's happened because they're going to give up that territory anyway, eventually, except it's going to take years and cost, a tremendous number of lives on both sides. I mean, a lot of people, Ukrainian men, probably women too, but probably mostly men, and Russian men have died for what? So that we can sell more weapons to the Ukraine. I mean, it's not a war for freedom or democracy. I mean, it's interesting if you look at the Heritage Foundation's index of economic freedom, even before the war started, Russia ranked higher in economic freedom than the Ukraine, and they both ranked pretty low. But the Ukraine was less free than Russia, and it's way less free now than it was before the war, because it's gotten a lot more oppressive ever since the war began. So no, I mean, it's not about, freedom. He's not, Zelensky is not, George Washington, by any stretch. So it really, this is a complete waste. And, we're the reason that it's happening.
Yeah.
And that's, one reason maybe if we elected Donald Trump, maybe the war will come to an end. But, as long as Biden is there, it's probably never going to end.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's a topic I've covered heavily. It's a humanitarian crisis. I believe it could end very quickly if the United States would look for an off-ramp, but it seems that they want to continue to pad the pockets of their corporate donors so that they can stay in power, and they don't give a damn about inflation or how it really affects the American people. Peter, I appreciate you coming on. If people want to follow you online, learn more about your businesses, where can I direct people?
Well, first of all, my asset management company, you can see Europe Pacific Asset Management. I think it's very important that people take advantage of, whatever time is left to get prepared for this dollar collapse that's long overdue and could happen, any day. You got to get out of dollars and, U.S. financial assets. I'm helping people build quality portfolios of good value dividend paying stocks around the world in the best locations with the best economic fundamentals, companies that will thrive in an environment of higher inflation, where the U.S. is, in decline, we're in stagflation, recession, depression. There are a lot of companies that could do well, especially the ones that are in the emerging markets or that sell into emerging market consumers that are going to be benefiting as the dollar declines. We also focus a lot on real assets, on commodities, energy, agriculture, mining, of course, precious metals. The gold stocks we mentioned earlier are dirt cheap. We have gold strategies. We have pure plays in the gold market. We separately manage accounts that are all in gold stocks. We incorporate some gold stocks into our other strategies. I also have 5 mutual funds that people can buy on their own. They're on all the major discount brokerage platforms. I have them no load. I have 5 funds, the Europe Pacific funds, International Value Fund, International Dividend Payers Fund, a gold fund, an emerging market fund, and a foreign bond fund. So you can buy all those things, those funds. You can check them out, read the prospectuses. They should do extremely well if I'm right about what's going to happen to the dollar and to gold. If you want to own physical gold, gold and silver, which I strongly recommend, and take possession of it, right? Have it shipped to your house. You should contact my gold company, Shift Gold. You go to shiftgold.com and talk to one of the representatives. They'll help you out and make sure you get the right gold at the right price. We don't push anybody into collectibles or numismatics. It's all bullion, bars, and coins at the lowest possible price. So the most amount of money stays in your pocket and not very much goes into my pocket or the pockets of the salesmen who are helping you to buy your gold. Also, follow me on social media. You know, my podcast, The Peter Schiff Show, it's on shiftradio.com. Also on my YouTube channel. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm now about 5,000 shy of 1 million followers. I'm really trying to see if I can get up to 1 million. It's taken a long time, though. This last 10,000 has taken forever. I keep losing and gaining, so it's like an uphill battle. Every time I gain 2 followers, I lose 1. Or maybe it's like I gain 10 and I lose 9. That's how difficult it is to get up there.
Yeah.
But I'm on Facebook and TikTok and all those YouTube, but Twitter seems to be where I have the most followers. But you can follow me all over. And we have a new business, Shift Sovereign. So you can check that up. I have a newsletter now that I'm putting. I have a free newsletter, a paid newsletter, and you can sign up for those at shiftsovereign.com.
Okay, I'll make sure to put all that down below. When you were talking about that last final push to get over 1 million, you could have been describing a Tesla battery. Like you can get to that first 90% really fast, but that last 10% is almost impossible to get that juice in those batteries. So, well, this has been a great conversation. I know how busy you are. I appreciate you coming on. I'm going to put those links down below, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Bye. Great. Bye.